Thank you.
Thank you. Assembly.
Thank you. Assemblyman O'Donnell.
Once again, I agree with Mr. Graff, okay? So I will take some medication when I get home to make sure I arrive tomorrow in the same state I arrived yesterday. But I believe in the secrecy of the grand jury, and I believe that it serves a very important function. And mostly what I believe, that it's outrageous to suggest that because a defendant happens to be a member of law enforcement, that her or his rights are less than all the other people who are defendants in a grand jury. So, having said that, I don't believe we should be opening them up. I don't believe we should be giving the names of witnesses, and I don't believe we should be giving out what the nature of the testimony is. However, there's a however. What a DA charges to the grand jury is different. You and your cohorts who are DAs are elected. They owe an obligation to their citizenry. So to that end, I have a bill that would allow any citizen to request from a DA, what did you charge that grand jury in this case? Because in the cases where we've had these problems, where there's been great public outcry, I fear that the DA is not charging the grand jury in a way that many of their constituents would have wanted them to do. And so just like my votes are public, just like my speech here will probably be put up by one of the people in this room a little while from now, the actions of DAs should be subject to the same scrutiny. So do you think it would be appropriate to require that DAs be required to release what charges they gave to a grand jury in cases where the public wants to know?
First of all, I think I differ with you in terms of your characterization of the proposal. I don't think it subjects police to a different standard. Right now, the governor...
No, sir, I wasn't saying that was in the proposal. I was saying that was my opinion.
I appreciate the opportunity to respond. Right now, the governor has the power to appoint a special prosecutor. Remember the death penalty case in the Bronx where Governor Pataki exercised that power. And frankly, the ability to review that power is very limited. And right now, the information that the governor has at his or her disposal when making that very important decision is very limited. What this proposal does is not give the governor any additional powers in terms of appointing a special prosecutor in cases involving police, because frankly, he can do that already. What it does is give the governor a mechanism to get information other than what's reported in the press, but real, accurate information about the case, so the governor can make an informed decision about whether or not it furthers good public policy to appoint a special prosecutor in that particular case. In terms of your point about release of the instructions to the grand jury, I certainly think that that's an important issue that should be discussed in the context of any legislation in this area.
Well, I wrote the bill, so I'd like to get, my name on that. That'd be good, okay? I'd like to now talk a little bit about photo arrays. You had mentioned it in your testimony that most places use photo arrays. In my experience, one of the problems with photo arrays is the pictures that are in them. So how does someone get to have their picture in a photo array? Well, chances are that's because they've been arrested before. And that's the picture that's there. Then you have the problem with what the picture looks like. Now, what we know from just reading the paper, when famous celebrities who are really drop-dead gorgeous, they get paid millions of dollars because of how good-looking they are, when they get arrested, they look like they went to hell in a handbasket, right? So even among the most gorgeous creatures in America, their arrest photos, they look guilty as can be. So isn't there some inherent risk in putting in front of a jury a picture of a criminal defendant in their worst possible moment, looking the worst they could possibly look, and creating and trampling on the presumption of innocence by putting such an image in front of them?
I guess the first thing I'd say is that the Innocence Project has been strenuously advocating for this to me and publicly for some period of time, and I can't believe that the Innocence Project would advocate for this if they felt that it was trampling on people's rights. And secondly, in this day and age, there was a time where I think it would be reasonable to say if you have a photo, it must be an arrest photo. If I want a photo of someone in this day and age, I go on the internet, and I don't know how to do it as well as
your grandkids. Yes, I understand.
But you pull up a Facebook photo, you pull up any other photo, so I think the idea that the public perception that you have a photo, it must be an arrest photo, may have been true 40 years ago. If I ask my kids today, I don't think their first instinct would be you got it from an arrest. I think their first instinct would be you got it off the internet. So I think things are changing, and I think that all of those things are important considerations. But at the end of the day, when the Innocence Project is advocating for me, saying this is the best way to ensure against wrongful identifications that lead to wrongful convictions, and this is what you should do. And I think the last thing I'll say is they do that with a caveat, that the photo arrays have to be have to be assembled and put together properly, and the procedure has to be conducted properly before it's a good idea to let a jury see it. So it's not just that any photo array should go in and a jury should see it. We should have guidelines and standards about how the arrays have to be put together and about how the procedures have to be done. And if and only if you meet those standards, then we should allow a jury to hear it.
I wouldn't dream of questioning Mr. Scheck or Mr. Neufeld or their commitment to innocence. And in fact, Mr. Scheck once tracked me down and congratulated me at my skills of cross-examination during one of these hearings, so I consider that a high mark. But most of the defender organizations in the state do oppose this idea, and I guess this is one of those cases where the devil will always be in the details. The third point I'd like to raise has to do with these verified instruments that you want to talk about. We have some experience in putting verified instruments out there. Where do we do that legislatively? We did that before the parole board. The parole board is currently required to use a verified instrument in determining release rates. And you know what happens? They ignore it. They ignore it, sir. We made them use them. They use them. They look at them and say, despite the fact that this instrument says X, I'm going to keep you in prison for 2 more years because I think that's the right thing to do. So in the end, any instrument, no matter how good it is only as useful as the person who's using its ability to use it correctly. And so from my own personal, I'm not speaking for the panel, from my own personal perspective, I would be unwilling to do that anywhere else in the state until you can talk to the people who work in the parole board to get them to do the job that we mandated that they do, which is take into account the information on that very instrument.
I certainly can't speak for the parole board, but I agree with your point that the instruments are only as good as the use that the people who need to use them make of them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Our next speaker is Senator Ruth Hassel Thompson.
Madam Chair. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Green. I'd like to explore some of the stuff we've been talking about, but my time is going to be very limited, so let's flip the switch a little and go to the GIVE initiative that you talk about, and certainly that's in the budget. We understand that the GIVE initiative is a replacement for Operation Impact for the most part, but you don't discuss the specificity of what these outreach programs are. Would you identify SNUG as perhaps being one of those or that type of model?
Absolutely. GIVE did replace Impact, you're right. Whereas Impact allowed a wider focus, GIVE focuses on shootings and homicides. And GIVE identifies 4 strategies that law enforcement can receive training, technical assistance on, and that will fund. That's focused deterrence, hotspot policing, crime prevention through environmental design, and street outreach work. So street outreach work is specifically one of those 4 strategies that we will support, that we do support, and we provide training on.
Okay, then I may be confused then. You're saying that the street outreach that's a part of GIVE is not SNUG.
Now, as part of GIVE, one of the requirements of GIVE is that all of the efforts that are funded by the state to get at shootings and homicides be aligned, so that we shouldn't have a GIVE initiative over here designed to reduce shootings and homicides, and a SNUG initiative over here designed to do the same thing, but no coordination between the two.
Okay, good.
You know, and that's not to say we don't recognize that in a good street outreach program, you know, there are pieces of it that can't be aligned with the police. For example, when your outreach workers are out on the street, it's very important that people do not view them as an arm of the police. But by the same token, they both have the exact same goals. There's information they both have at a higher level that's very useful to both of them. So there has to be at least some level of coordination between those efforts.
How successful do you believe that the outreach, it's been a year, and how successful do you think, number one, the outreach overall has been, and number two, its coordination with SNUG in terms of reducing crime in your hotspots?
We're actually heading into our third year, I believe, with the street outreach work, and I think that it is a huge asset. I think it's something we all should be very proud of. You know, certainly the legislature for providing the funding. We've provided a structure. We have a statewide coordinator for the street outreach programs across the state. He visits every program at least once a month. He communicates with them regularly. In addition, we have a training director now, so we train every program manager, every supervisor, every outreach worker. If you look at the jurisdictions across the state, you know, some are more advanced than others. They have different strengths, but you know, there are instances in one jurisdiction where the police were having a spike in homicides and they reached out to the street outreach program who on at least 2 separate occasions helped them get a handle on what was going on and really quash the violence. There are stories from around the state where in different ways those street outreach programs have really helped control shootings. So, and the other thing I'd say is I'm not aware of any other state that has a statewide street outreach network that's organized and coordinated the way ours is. So, I think it's a huge tool in the toolbox, and would certainly advocate that at a bare minimum we continue.
We've used the Chicago ceasefire model and some other models. Do you see us moving toward creating a New York model?
Yes. As with everything that I do, I like to look at everything that's out there, try and understand what the strong points are of all of the different approaches, and then take the strong points of all of them and put them into what I think is the best approach. And certainly there are a lot of really good ideas in the ceasefire Chicago cure violence model. But for example, Tenny Gross out of the Institute for Nonviolence has been doing this work since the mid-90s and has a lot of good ideas as well and has done a lot of good work. And his ideas aren't necessarily the same as all of the cure violence ones out of Chicago. So what we've tried to do is really work with Tenny and understand his program and his thoughts, work with Cure Violence and understand theirs. And yes, at the end of the day, I do envision us taking all of those ideas and putting them into what we think is the best model.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Our next speaker, well, I'm sorry, do we have anyone from the Assembly? Okay, our next speaker is Senator Valmonette Montgomery.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Good afternoon. It's finally afternoon. I just wanted to ask you about the, I guess, 2 areas. One is the reentry issue, and the other one is juvenile justice. On reentry, I'm looking at the proposed budget for this time, which reflects the governor's some of the governor's primary concerns, one of them being the whole question of reentry. And I know that the governor has been working on that for some time, and I really appreciate the fact that this has become a primary concern. I am, however, I don't understand why it is that at the same time that we are concerned about reentry, there's 12.8 million in reductions or eliminations, proposed eliminations of programs that are basically community-based, many of them specifically related to providing support services to people reentering community. And so I have a big question as to, obviously, many of these are legislative ads. However, I would like to hear from you how you, from your perspective, will be ensuring that we continue some of those very critical services. Because when people return to community, when they return home, they look for people like me to find out where they can get some help immediately. And they need housing. They are looking for employment. They need services that help them repair or access necessary papers that they or other information that they would need. So where will those services fit into your budget as proposed?
Sure. And I can't speak to the legislative ads. It's my understanding that those are things that will be discussed as you go forward with the budget negotiations. But in terms of the governor's budget, there is no reduction in the DCJS budget with regard to any of our reentry or alternative to incarceration funding streams. And in fact, there's a $2 million increase, $1 million increase. So prior budget was just over $3 million for 19 reentry task forces around the state. This year, in the governor's proposed budget, it gives us another $1 million. That will allow us to, assuming, or if it is approved, start a 20th reentry task force in Queens, which obviously, given the volume of cases, is in need of a task force, but also strengthen all of the task forces across the state. And then secondly, there's an additional $1 million ad with regard to the alternative to incarceration programs that would allow us to help develop screening and assessment programs to make sure that the people coming into the criminal justice system at a very early point in time are screened and assessed so that their needs are understood by those making decisions, defense attorneys, judges, prosecutors, and at the same time they understand what the needs are. They understand the inventory of programs available in that area so that people can get matched to the right programs, and we have the best chance of breaking that cycle of recidivism. So as to the programs or as to the funding streams for DCJS within the governor's proposed budget, none of them were cut, and in fact they were increased by $2 million.
All right, I just, when I look at this list and I see programs like Exodus Transitional Community Center and Fortune Society and Community Service Society and those programs, so obviously they will be coming to the legislature to say we need funding, and these are, relatively speaking, small amounts, 100,000, 200,000, and so forth. However, the fact of the matter is each of those programs, and if you put all of that together, we then begin to have a real network of reentry organizations, and each one is important and related to our success. The task forces, all due respect, I appreciate the work that they do, but they're not on the ground providing actual services. And so that's what I feel is missing, and I certainly hope that together we're going to ensure that the programs that need support will receive it. And I would like to, in order for me to see where the programs, some of them certainly in my district, but in the city in particular, where they fit into your framework, I would really appreciate having a list of those because I don't know exactly where they all are at this point. The second question, and I'm out of time, unfortunately, but I have a real interest in the juvenile justice work that you're doing, and where you are with that, especially as it relates to alternative to incarceration programs.
And I know you're out of time, I'll briefly say the governor's budget does put $26.2 million through DCJS into those on-the-ground programs you're talking about. I don't have the list with me. We'll certainly get it to you.
Thank you.
But just for example, Fortune gets a sizable amount of money.
Fortune Society?
Fortune Society for their employment-based work, working with people who are reentering unemployment services.
Yes. And there are several others that you will let me know where they stand as well.
Yes, we'll provide you a list of our funded programs.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. That closes our discussion, so I want to thank you very much, Executive Deputy Commissioner Green. It's good to see you again, and thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate the time.
Great. Our next speaker is Acting Commissioner Anthony Annucci, New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision. Thank you very much. Could I have some order, please? Welcome, Acting Commissioner Annucci. We're very glad to have you here today. I'm sure that the members between the Senate and the Assembly will have a lot of questions, and we look forward to your testimony. And at this time, you may begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Young, Chairman Farrell, and other distinguished chairs and members of the legislature. I am Anthony J. Annucci, Acting Commissioner of the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision. It is my honor to discuss some of the highlights of Governor Cuomo's executive budget plan. The governor's policies are moving corrections in the right direction. Last year, New York State's inmate population continued to decline, and there are now over 20,000 fewer inmates than there were in 1999. Still, New York State continues to be the safest large state with the lowest incarceration rate. To continue this trend of reduced incarcerations coupled with increased public safety, the department's proposed executive budget contains a number of important new initiatives. These include groundbreaking special housing unit reforms, the increased use of technology and updated policies to better supervise and secure our facilities, and several reentry initiatives designed to further reduce recidivism by upgrading educational opportunities and vocational training. Within our $310 million capital budget, we are also moving forward with plans to transform Hudson into a hybrid youth facility for 16 and 17-year-olds. Despite the reduction in inmate population, the executive budget does not recommend any prison closures this year. Prison discipline is vital to the safety of correction officers and inmates alike. We will undertake historical reforms in our approach to solitary confinement, which will modernize prison discipline. These reforms will improve conditions within our segregation units and revise our disciplinary guidelines while preserving safety and security. As we did for the seriously mentally ill, we will develop specialized programs to safely provide out-of-cell programming and treatment to inmates. Inmate reentry programming, including education and vocational training, is a vital part of the reform process. DOCS will continue its expansion of college programming through a $7.5 million funding from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. This expansion will not cost taxpayer dollars. College programming has been shown to significantly lower recidivism and increase the likelihood of a successful transition back into society. It also creates positive role models for other inmates to follow, ultimately leading to safer prisons. Further, in an effort to increase the issuance of high school diplomas, we will hire psychologists to diagnose adult inmates with learning disabilities and update our Thinking for a Change program with a new version issued by the National Institute of Corrections, or NIC. In an effort to modernize vocational training, we will also upgrade several vocational print shops and expand our computer vocational shops to include computer coding. The department is focused on creating the safest environment possible. In partnership with the unions, we will continue to develop strategies to reduce violence within prisons and to conduct security staffing reviews as outlined in the fiscal year 14-15 budget. Last year, we hired 103 correction officers. Also, we have either begun or will pursue technological enhancements, training improvements, and policy changes that will enhance overall safety and security within DOC's facilities. These initiatives include installation of fixed cameras, the deployment of thermal imaging and heartbeat detection devices, the installation of the rounds tracker system, the procurement of portable metal detectors, and the piloted use of body cameras to be worn by staff. The department will also be refining training in the areas of use of force and interpersonal communication to provide our staff with additional avenues to de-escalate situations before force becomes necessary. In the upcoming year, we will also be pursuing many policy changes, such as a new rule designation for synthetic marijuana, the expanded use of canine units, the elimination of metal containers from our commissaries, the use of secure vendors for packages, the piloting of pepper spray, and enhancement of tool control practices. Our internal investigations unit has been completely overhauled and is now called the Office of Special Investigations, or OSI. A new chief and a new director of operations have been appointed. The chief now reports directly to me, and we meet regularly. The new leaders are both attorneys with significant law enforcement backgrounds. Under their leadership, a number of new initiatives have been implemented to foster an atmosphere of ethical behavior and thorough investigations. OSI has also bolstered its ranks with highly qualified investigators and analysts with decades of experience from outside law enforcement agencies. Most importantly, DOCS will be working with our federal partners to establish best practices. In 2015, the NIC conducted comprehensive security audits at several facilities, and in 2016, they will audit several more. The NIC will also review our training academy and train selected staff members on how to conduct security audits. To build upon these best practices, DOCS will be instituting a process for unannounced security audits and risk assessments in line with NIC's suggestions. DOCS is also responsible for approximately 36,000 parolees. In 2014, we issued a recidivism report showing that just 9% of ex-offenders released in 2010 were sent back to prison within 3 years, based upon a new felony conviction. This figure was the lowest since 1985, and for those released in 2011, the figure has been lowered further to 8.6%. We are making an impact. Despite this positive trend, we know there is still work to do. We have undertaken an enhanced supervision project in Monroe County that focuses on our highest risk parolees with GPS monitors and a lower caseload ratio. We also launched combined operations involving community supervision and our Office of Special Investigations to apprehend parole violators in careful coordination with our federal, state, and local law enforcement partners. We also implemented last year's law ensuring next-day reporting, and we arranged for inmates to be released from facilities in closer proximity to their home communities. Opioid abuse is a serious concern when it comes to recently released inmates. To address this, DOCS has started an opioid overdose prevention program in collaboration with DOH and the Harm Reduction Coalition. We now issue naloxone kits, the opioid antidote, to inmates scheduled for release and provide training on how to use it. To help prevent relapse, DOCS will also be using Vivitrol paired with traditional drug treatment counseling. In conclusion, there again will be many challenges and expectations for DOCS and the thousands of hardworking employees who perform their responsibilities in an exemplary manner, often under dangerous and difficult circumstances. The Governor's proposed budget will place DOCS in an advantageous position to fulfill these expectations. Thank you, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Our first speaker is Senator Mike Mazzolio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Senator.
Acting Commissioner. Another year of acting, Anthony. But you've had a hard year.
Thank you.
All kidding aside, it's been a very, very difficult year for the department, for the people who work in the department. And I want to probe just a couple of things regarding what was so costly an effort last year. The cost of the prison break from Clinton. What does the department estimate those costs to be?
$12.7 million for the escape.
Now, are these exclusively personnel costs, or how do you estimate those elements?
Mostly those expenses were related to overtime for staff involved in the pursuit. Some ancillary services like food and things of that nature, lodging, but mostly the overtime.
Those costs are exclusively for the department?
Yes.
Not inclusive of costs that coordinating agencies, particularly the New York State Police, had to engage in. Is that correct?
Those were just DOCS's expenses.
Our estimates have the total cost on or about $23 to $25 million. Does that sound about right to you?
I really can't speculate on those other costs, Senator.
Tell us what kinds of things has the department had to reevaluate since that prison break?
There are many steps that we have taken to bolster security. I've had conversations with every one of my superintendents, in particular my maximum security superintendents. We've issued a number of memorandums to reinforce basic security protocols, basic frisk practices, ensuring that superintendents understand their responsibility to oversee all 3 shifts, to be there at unannounced times, to ensure that security supervisors are making rounds. We are also investing in a lot of new equipment to better enable our security staff to perform their responsibilities. We have the thermal imaging devices. We have portable metal detectors. We are enforcing a lot more frisking of staff periodically. Going forward with our training, we have the games inmates play video so that will be shown to every employee and they can understand the dangers involved with becoming too familiar with inmates. There are many, many things that we've done, Senator. I can provide you a full list. I don't want to take up too much time.